Today we are going to be reading Otis and the Kittens. It was hot and dry on the farm where the friendly little tractor named Otis lived. Otis couldn't remember the last time it had rained. Farmers all over the valley grew more anxious by the day. Water was in short supply. The ground was hard, and the corn stalks were half as tall as they should have been. Otis spent his afternoons out in the sweltering fields with the farm hands baling hay. Once the load was full, with a puff and a chuff, Otis would pull the wagon into the old barn down by the bend at Mud Creek. The farm hands would use a pulley to lift each bale up into the loft where it would be stored for the long winter to come. When the sun had gone over the hill and work was done, Otis was ready to sit in the shade and rest. But not Otis's friend the bull. The bull liked to stand in front of Otis and snort and snarl and huff hot air. 2 snorts, a snarl, and a huff. All the animals knew what that meant. The bull was challenging Otis to a tug of war. Otis smiled. His friends were always eager to play, even after a long day of work. One duck wound the end of a rope around the bull's horns, and another duck looped the other end around Otis's steering wheel. The animals then took sides, grabbing on any way they could. Everyone pulled and tugged with all of their might. Eventually, Otis would ease up a little. He didn't care much about winning. He just liked having fun with his friends. One afternoon, when everyone was up under the shade of the apple tree, Otis spotted something moving down in the field. It looked to be an orange tabby cat. Where did she come from? Otis wondered. He watched as she ran toward the old barn, and there he saw something that caused his engine to sputter, a swirl of smoke. Otis raced to the barn with the animals following behind. They discovered flames coming from the loft inside the old barn. A fire! The barn was filled with brittle, dry straw, and Otis knew it wouldn't take long for it all to burst into flames. Just then the tabby cat appeared in the barn window. With a puffy chuffety chuff, Otis rushed into the burning barn. Inside, the flames were growing and smoke was forming a dark cloud. The cat was pacing back and forth high above on a rafter. Otis chuffed for her to jump down, but the cat wouldn't budge. Instead, she stared down at Otis and belted out the loudest meow Otis had ever heard. What was she trying to tell him? Suddenly, Otis heard a tiny meow from the hayloft, and then another tiny meow, and another, and another, and another, and another. At once, 5 furry little heads popped up and stared down at him. Kittens. As flames blazed overhead, Otis stood on hind wheels and stretched to the edge of the loft. To a chorus of tiny meows, one by one, the kittens hopped down. The farm animals cheered as Otis emerged from the burning barn with kittens all over him. But as soon as Mama Cat counted their little heads, she meowed frantically back at the barn. This time Otis had no doubt what she was saying. How many more were still in there, he wondered. By then, the top of the barn was engulfed in flames, sending large plumes of smoke into the sky. Otis was afraid, but he gunned his engine, screeched his tires, and dashed back into the burning barn. Inside, the heat was growing worse, and it was hard to breathe. Otis revved his engine, and one last little head popped up, trembling from fear. Otis puffed a gentle chuff, and the kittens climbed down on top of him, hopped to his seat, leapt to the floor, and scampered out of the barn to safety. Outside, the animals cheered when they saw another kitten emerge, and they watched for Otis to follow. Inside, the flames spread by the second. Otis wheeled around to see if any more kittens were left. The old boards of the barn floor creaked, buckled, and moaned. The walls popped, and he couldn't wait another second. Just as Otis spotted the exit and raced his wheels to leave, there was a giant crash. The floor collapsed, and Otis plunged to the darkness below.